Welcome everyone, this is our second episode. I'm Dion Ferrier.
And I'm Chad Townsend, and this is Hex Weekly.
So in this week's episode, we'll be talking about player versus player, player versus enemy, guild features, and cards of the week.
Dion, would you like to get us started on the PvP?
Sure, I can do that. Player versus player, we're essentially looking at your normal game types. Constructed, standard, whatever you want to call it, and then you have your draft mode. And also, Corey mentioned that whatever you've played in a previous game, he'd like to include it in Hex, but a better, more updated, maybe fast-paced version. And I think we can expect that to include two-headed giant and Highlander types. But as far as the standard, you want to bring us into the details of that one?
So if you've played a TCG in the past, you probably know what standard is. It's a 60-card deck and a 15-card sideboard. You start your turn by drawing 7 cards. You have a mulligan option if your hand isn't what you want it to be. On a mulligan, you shuffle. You're actually going to redraw, but you only draw 6. You're allowed to mulligan as many times as you want, but it's really not your best option past 5 cards because it really sets you at a disadvantage to your opponent. We've also seen in previous videos done by the developers where they've actually done PvP matches against each other. We might even link one of those videos up on the bottom of our page if you missed that. You're also going to be able to have a champion, which is going to add some really cool features and really synergize hopefully with your deck. When you play resources, which are your, if you've played Magic, they're your mana, they're what you actually cast cards with. These cards will be actually usable by your champion to use different spells and effects. With one of the earlier cards we've seen in the video, there was an orc female who was actually able to cast fire elementals into play. They die at the end of turn, but they offered a large amount of damage.
And you'll find that the champions you can select are actually really related to the Magic the Gathering Planeswalkers, except for the fact that you don't have to play them. They're instantly in effect as soon as the game begins, and also that the only way you can get charge counters is with the effects of certain cards that you play. Resources will always have this. There's a few artifacts that we've seen in limited release cards that will add charge counters to your champion. And like Chad was saying, there's some really cool effects that can come from it.
I personally am really excited about these champions. I hope that we're going to have a lot of options with them. And it's kind of exciting to have like a physical character, sort of like in the World of Warcraft card game, that represents you. This is like you in the virtual space.
Alright, so I think it's time for us to move on to draft mode. I know personally this is going to be the most played option for me. It's a lot of fun if you haven't done this in the past. It's a great way to find new cards. It's a great way to change up your typical player versus player experience. Chad, we've played this countless times together.
Oh, I already know that I'm going to empty my bank account probably playing draft mode in Hex.
For those of you that don't know, draft mode is a group of people who get together for a small tournament, and each player buys their own 3 packs. Now, how this starts off is each player opens up a pack at the same time. They sort through the 15 cards that are in there. They pick one, they keep it, and pass all the remaining cards to the right. This repeats until the pack is gone, and then you grab a new one. And then when you're out of packs, you construct a deck from those cards that you've drawn.
In draft, the minimum amount of cards that you need in a deck is 40. So the average is usually 20 cards that you picked up in the draft. You synergize those together, build your deck, and then you select 20 resources to fill the rest of your deck. Any cards you have left over are pretty much considered your sideboard. So if you can possibly use them, you can have a sideboard. I find that it's usually very uncommon to have more than 3 or 4 cards that I'm using in a sideboard, since your options are kind of limited in draft, which isn't a bad thing. It really makes you think outside the box. And a lot of draft is won in the meta when you're actually picking those cards and deciding. It's not all about gameplay. If you're a great strategizer and you can find out what other people at the table are playing, and you can select a color that 3 people at the table aren't fighting over, you have a good chance to build a really strong deck.
Also, one of the things that we gotta remember is that there's no limit to the amount of cards you can have. I mean, I'm sorry, not the amount of cards, but the amount of a single card that you can have. So these escalation cards, I think, are going to be a very, very good pick in draft mode. Because if you can have 6 or 7 of them from one draft in a deck, they're going to get crazy really quick.
Absolutely. From what we've seen, these escalation cards are going to play a huge factor in draft. When you only have 20 cards to pick from, and you can select a card that is shuffled back into your even smaller deck, then bring it back out with an escalation cost. For example, Chronic Madness. If you are able to pull 5 of these cards, and your opponent only has 40 cards, and they're forced to draw 7, it's not going to take many turns to mill them.
Not at all. So there's going to be a lot of neat features that are going to be coming out because of the new keywords in Hex, and I think we're all just kind of waiting to see what's going to be released. Now, going back to what Corey Jones said about if you've seen it in another game, he's going to try including it in Hex. One of the things that we've seen on the forum a lot, and we personally want to see really bad, is the two-headed giant feature, where you get to team up with your best friend and take on another team of 2. It's going to allow for a lot more synergy, a lot more strategy, and I think it's going to be a really fun feature if they include it.
Exactly. As soon as this feature is released, you can bet that you're going to be facing off against us on Twitch. We'll be live streaming. We'd love to get some fans from the show, playing against me and Dion. That'd be a really cool, great experience. Maybe hand out a few booster pack prizes.
Don't beat us too bad, though. We don't want to be embarrassed in front of a live stream, So take it easy. Alright, so now to mix it up a little bit, let's throw PvE in here. It's something that hasn't been done with a card game in the past that I'm aware of, at least not an online card game.
It's going to be such a dynamic format. It's almost going to be like any other MMO experience, but I think that it's going to have some really dynamic storytelling. I mean, that's what I'm hoping most from this PvE experience, man. Like, I want a story that doesn't fall off when you're level 20.
I'm pretty sure when you start out this PvE, it's going to be like most games. You're going to choose one race or the other. Okay, I'm sorry, not necessarily race, but one faction. And the factions are called the Ardent and the Underworld. I can't remember all of the races that are in each one, but I'm pretty sure Chad remembers. Do you remember?
Yeah, fortunately for you, I have the Hex webpage up. It's a great place to find information on the game. For the Ardent, which are your generic good guys, you have the humans, elves, coyotals, and orcs, which, I mean, my feelings on these guys, there's some really interesting races going on here. I mean, in my opinion, I often see orcs as more of an evil type, which is kind of funny because on the underworld side, which is your considered evil side, I really didn't expect the shin hairs.
Well, I think a lot of our questions are going to be answered once the PvE is actually released and we play through some of the story. I would have to assume Corey Jones knows what he's doing, and there's going to be really good reasons why these groups have banded up together. I'm really looking forward to it.
The major thing I'm hoping for from this PvE experience is I want a story that drives me from beginning to end. I'm the kind of guy who, like, I jump into a new MMO and I'm like, God, I love this. The story's awesome. I can't wait to, progress the levels. I get to level 10, and I'll tell you, honestly, I feel like most companies, level 10 to 40 is just, it's filler. There's no...
It's just grind.
Yeah, it's just grinding.
Constant grind.
I hope that this game really offers story and makes me engage through the whole experience. Would be something that I haven't seen much in a PvP or in a PvE scenario in a long time. I just want a story that's fantastic and really keeps me captivated and wanting to play.
See, on the other side, I want to get some cool gear from it. I've seen the equipment, and these equipment items that you can get in PvE will completely 180 your deck. You can get some awesome combos off of these things. Alright, I'm going to use the word OP. They're completely overpowered in some of the combos, and I like it.
Well, don't get me wrong, guys. I care about loot, and honestly, loot is what drives us to play MMOs. I want to get to level 60. I want to be better than my friends. And I think that in this game, gear is so dynamic to it. Like when you equip an equipment to like your character in like let's say World of Warcraft for example. I know I'm name dropping a lot in this, but it's easier to compare things. In games such as World of Warcraft, you equip your equipment and it's mostly just like a small stat boost. But in Hex, it seems like these cards can really just dynamically change everything about your deck. I think that when you start the game, your deck that you create, like Dion said, it's going to 180. You will not be almost able to recognize the deck that you started with.
Now, this is going to do some interesting things, I think, to the market. I was always big in the guild wars, how can I make the most profit? I think one of the biggest things for profit is going to be your PvE equipment. Getting those legendary drops in the raids are going to sell for very, very large amounts of gold on the market, I believe.
Who knows? Even some of these more coveted pieces, you might be able to even pick up a couple pieces of platinum. I'm personally assuming that 90% of the equipment in the game will be sold for gold and never reach a platinum level. But I wouldn't be surprised that if, your items that have maybe a 1 to 2% drop rate would easily fetch some platinum, which can be turned into PvP cards.
Right, so essentially, Hex could be a completely free game for you if you go the PvE route. Granted, it'll probably take a lot more time, but it's an option.
And as we're recording this, it seems that there is some new stuff posted on the page. I don't
Really?
actually think I don't think we'll actually be able to get to it. We're actually recording on Friday.
Oh yeah, it looks like the PvE Champions Underworld and art feature The Venom.
I have
Just
to
released.
say that both of them look like incredible art and look like a pretty good read. So we'll get back to you on those.
Alright, so the next thing I'd like to talk about is Hex and its guilds. Guilds are going to offer some really cool features to include the fact that every guild's going to have a card bank. And the card bank works by everybody who's a member pulls in their cards, but also gets to share everybody else's. So it allows you to basically play test decks that you don't own yet.
We both think this is a great feature since, playing enough Magic, you can go online, you can build a deck list, and you can go, this thing's going to be incredible. All I have to do is gather all these cards, or make 60 proxies, or however many you need to actually play test the deck, and it's really time consuming. The ability for your guild to work together, collect cards, be like, holy crap guys, I got this new rare, throw it in your decks, let's try it out. And even the ability to test decks against other people in your guild, which is the main feature of this, it's really going to give you more experience.
Without the commitment, I think, really.
Exactly.
Without having to commit to actually buying that full, 16 cards you still require to build your deck. You can find out, let's all be honest here, we built the decks, we played them, and then we realized, holy crap, this is terrible. It'll never work in an actual tournament.
We've also heard that if you're in a bigger guild, you'll actually have a chance to get some of the professional decks that win giant tournaments, and you'll be able to add them to your deck collection. You'll not be able to use any of these cards outside the guild, from what it sounds like, but you'll be able to use them, practice against your guild mates, and really find out why these cards are winning, and of course, improve your skill.
Right, and that's a great way to have someone in your team, build the deck that you're failing to beat and just play over and over again to figure out what you need to change to be able to overcome that.
This is also going to be a great feature for that friend who's never really experienced a PvP card game. We have friends who are like, you should really try TCG card games. And it can be a really hard experience to get into because there's a lot of cards, you've never really experienced a game type like this. It'll be great to be able to sit down with them, give them a deck that they do not have to pay for at all, and be like, let me show you, let me teach you, this is how we're going to swap cards in, what cards do you think are going to fit your deck? And it's going to save a lot of money for that person who wants to give it a try, but doesn't know if they want to spend the money.
And a really cool feature that I like is that the guilds will be able to have a in-guild tournament, so to speak. I know when Chad and I build our guild, we will without a doubt have tournaments within it itself, so everybody has all the cards to pull from. It's completely fair. everybody gets the same selection. It's not who has the most money. Um, it'll be a lot of fun.
Exactly, and I think this is a good time to mention that we are planning on building our own guild. We're planning on announcing the name later, but if you're interested, please leave a comment on the bottom of the page. We'll definitely get back to you. We want to create a guild. We have some friends who have spent we'll say some buku bucks. I mean, we got a couple $500 tiers, maybe a 120. I know that me and Dion both purchased a $60 tier. So right off the bat, we're gonna have a large supply of cards. We want to get a great guild experience going where, you know, it. We want to stay connected. A lot of times in MMOs, you find yourself really wanting that player experience with like more friends, but it's hard to find. And we think through the podcasts that we'll be able to stay connected and really bring something to this game that other guilds might not actually have.
One more thing that we're really hoping happens, and we might need your help to make this happen, is we want a draft mode built into the guilds. I think it would be very cool if the guild had enough cards that you could set up a draft tournament that costs zero money to everybody within the guild, and it just randomly puts together 15 cards and lets each person simulate opening a pack.
Exactly. We've been chatting about this. This is one of the features that me and Dion want the most. You really can't do this in a physical TCG. We want the experience that if let's say you build a guild and your guild has 1,200 cards, you're allowed to use this option where the game actually re-sleeves them all for you in a random booster pack, and then you get to experience a draft without having to pay. And it would really give players a chance to hone their skills in draft, which is going to be one of the major play types.
Now, of course, this game type, the whole drafting mode, has not been announced by, or even mentioned, for that matter, by the Cryptozoic crew. But hopefully we can get the word out to them that we would really like it, and maybe they'll include it.
Exactly. If you guys are interested in this feature, please leave a comment. Let's try to get enough people banded together that we can actually make an impact and tell Cryptozoic how the community feels about an idea like this.
Now, ending on that note, let's move on to the cards of the week. Alright, now before we begin this, I think there may be a few people who are looking only for the cards of the week selection, so what I feel we should start doing is we'll start providing a link in the description of the video that'll jump you exactly to this point in all future videos. So you don't have to listen to our other things if you already know enough about the game or just for whatever reason don't want to listen to us talk about it.
Alright, Ian, would you like to start off by showing us your card of the week?
I suppose my card is going to be the Vampire King. It's a 4-cost, 2-blood threshold troop. Its first ability is Flight. The second thing it says is when an opposing troop dies, if this troop is in play, transform that troop into a vampire and put it into play under your control. Alright, Chad, can you help me out a little bit? I need some help explaining the formula that we usually use to determine if the card's cost is worth its effect.
Sure thing. The formula that we like to use when determining the value of a troop is for each point in attack and defense separately, each point is worth a half a point. So when you have a 1 and 1, we like to consider that a 1 point. So this card having 3 attack and 3 defense, we consider that a 3. Now comparing that against its casting cost, it's a -1 right now. Adding in the term flight, we consider it a 4 for 4. But when you actually add this second ability, which is just incredible, I would personally say this is a 2. How would you feel about this, Steve?
The ability is definitely worth 2 points in my opinion, which makes it a 6 value card at the cost of 4.
So we like to put this at a positive 2.
Right, and now what this troop is essentially going to do is whenever you kill someone, it's going to turn it into a vampire shown here. A vampire would normally be a 2-cost card, has flight, 2 attack, 2 defense. Very strong card, mostly because of the flight. And what I can see this going very well with is a burn and murder deck. Kind of a control aspect. I mean, once you have Vampire King out there, you can start playing the card Murder, which is a 3 cost, 1 blood threshold, quick action. All it says is destroy target troop. Quick way to add a vampire. It's very easy. It creates an instant card advantage. Now, another card that I would, without a doubt, include in this deck is Sapper's Charge. It's an artifact, costs 1, no threshold, and it has the effect of pay 2, sacrifice this artifact, deal 2 damage to target champion or troop. Chad, what do you think?
I feel like any card that's actually able to kill your opponent's creatures without actually giving them the option to block, which in the case of most creatures, if they have Vampire King on the board, if you have Vampire King on the board, and if you swing in with a creature, they might actually just let your creature deal damage to them. So any spell or ability or activated ability that actually allows you to kill off their creatures is a huge benefit here, because now you're gaining board control, and you're gonna have a lot of vampires. It's gonna be overwhelming, and your damage potential is just gonna go through the roof.
So that's about it for my card. I mean, there's a lot of options out there. Once again, no matter what, I'd love to hear your guys' ideas on this. I know there's obvious cards I've missed over. There's going to be some cards that are going to come out that are going to work even better with this. Feel free to leave a message or a comment or anything about what you think would work better. Alright, so that's it for me. Chad, your card?
My card this week is actually Zoltog. He's been shown a lot, but I think that he's just an incredible PvP card. He's a 4 cost. He's an Orc Ranger. His threshold is 2. He is unique, which means you're only allowed to have one of him on the field. If your opponent actually brings one of these into play, black hole happens, time and space ceases to exist, and they both explode. That means they're both sent to your graveyard. Uh, Zoltog has attack of 3, defense of 4, which makes him a very viable creature for his cost. His activated, well, not activated, his ability is, when an orc troop you control deals damage to a champion, create a Savage Raider and put it into play. Now, I'll be honest to you, when I first seen this card, I was thinking of a million ways to be able to get my orcs to just rush through my opponent and deal damage. And I kind of overlooked this card at the beginning. It's called Fang of the Mountain God. It's a 1 cost, he's a 2/2, and his ability states, at the start of your turn, this troop deals 1 damage to your champion. Now with Zoltog, it says when an orc troop you control deals damage to a champion, any champion, it can be you, it can be your next door neighbor, you are putting Savage Raiders into play, and this card is just incredible. Dion, do you see any other cards that Zoltog might synergize well with?
Well, that's complete synergy that you just explained right there. The one card that I might add into it to kind of make up for that life loss would be Life Siphon. It's variable cost, 2 blood threshold, basic action. It says deal X damage to target champion and gain X health. So basically, the more you pay, the more health you gain, and you can kill and you can deal damage to the enemy champion.
Exactly. That card synergizes so well. It just fits the theme of a deck like an orc deck. The ability to do lots of damage. That's a great finisher late game if your opponent's running control or trying to board wipe you. You're gonna be able to deal a lot of damage and make up a lot of the health that you lost earlier. Another card that I think synergizes well with Zoltog is it's called Blood Harbinger. It's a 2 cost, threshold of 2. He's an orc mage. He's a 1/3, but his ability is when this troop dies, target opposing champion may pay 5 health. If they don't, search your deck for a Blood Harbinger and put it into your hand. Now, to be honest with you, I don't see a lot of players paying the 5 health. So it's actually going to allow you to search for another Blood Harbinger and put him into play and continue your onslaught. This deck, if you build a deck around Zoltog, you're looking at a really high damage, really quick, aggressive deck. I know we kind of went into detail about other cards and kind of got away from Zoltog, so um, Dion, would you like to explain the formula on him and maybe give us a value?
Alright, I suppose I owe that to you because you kind of explained my last one for me. Zoltog, being a 4 cost, is easily made up for by his 3 attack and 4 defense. Right away, that's a 3.5 value with my equation. And then when you add his ability, he becomes a 5.5 at least, at a minimum. How you could run this guy in an orc deck, or how you could not run this guy in an orc deck, is beyond me. I can definitely see his value skyrocketing on the market.
My feelings exactly. I think Zoltog's a great card and a great addition to any orc deck. Before we wrap up the show, let's talk about those updates that just popped up on the Hex page. From what we've seen, they just released the Underworld set, and looks like there's a lot of options. I mean, there's a couple dwarfs. You got a dwarf ranger, mage, warrior, couple necrotics, which are looking really cool. Necrotic warrior, a few shin hairs, and it looks like one venom. Not much love for the Venons when it comes to heroes right now. But
No, he looks just about useless.
all right, I personally have to say, we're probably gonna eat our words on this, but they put him at the bottom. He looks out of place. He's his ability, it's not really looking that hot right now, I have to say. And we're spending a lot of time talking about the card that looks the worst on the page. Dion, do you see any that you personally jump out at you?
There is a new shin hair that is a 2 blood threshold, pay 4, basic action, and you combined okay, I'm sorry, not just combine, you have to exhaust and combine 2 of your troops. It gets attack equal to their combined attack and defense equal to their combined defense, and it's called Abomination.
I will give it to you on this one. This Shin Hair is probably the coolest champion so far, and I might eat my words on this too. I wouldn't be surprised, since I've heard Corey talk earlier, that that this Abomination might have the abilities of both of them. So I wouldn't be surprised if every single champion was probably running this. One that personally jumps out at me in terms of art as well as the ability is Nin the Shadow, which is a necrotic rogue. He has a threshold of 1 for his ability. You have to use 2 charges, and you bury target buries the top 2 cards of his deck, which can be really devastating to people who are running control decks, where they're placing a lot of cards on the top of their decks and trying to control their draws. He can be pretty devastating, especially in a mill deck. Any other cards that are jumping out at you right now, Dion?
So, I mean, I don't think we can really go too far into detail with these. We just got them, we just looked at them, but next week you can definitely expect us to review a lot of these.
Before we forget, we had a contest last week that we started. The 1 booster pack for anyone that signed up on Facebook or liked or subscribed on YouTube. Dion, do you have the winner for this week?
This week's winner is going to be Shawn Vauthier. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sorry if I didn't.
He probably slaughtered it, so you should tease him on Facebook. Speaking of that, if you are Shawn Vauthier, please hit us up on Facebook at Hex, and we will definitely make sure you get that pack when the game comes out. I'm Chad.
This is Dion.
And this is Hex Weekly.